Right, so I welcome our viewers today. My name's Sherry Forsyth, a peak performance coach. And I welcome Jeff Player, a very good friend of ours today. He's going to be speaking to us about polymyalgia. But Jeff, are you happy that we just dive straight into all the questions?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your life, not going into too much detail, but just to give us an idea of who you are?
Well, I've always been involved with sports all my life, specifically tennis, and I took it up seriously, got to the professional level. So I've played that most of my life, and stopped that about early 20s, playing seriously because of back problems and those sort of things. And so generally I've been very heavily involved in sports throughout my life.
Okay, and as a result of being involved in sport, I'm assuming that you would have really looked after your body and had, other than the odd party or two that is thrown in there, but generally looked after your body with diet and that kind of thing. Are we right in assuming that?
Yeah, to a large extent. When we were growing up, we didn't have the biomechanics that they have today with all the research that's gone into it. So generally, we were very fit. How we looked after our body, I don't think was the greatest because we didn't have the information that is available today. But certainly, we were pretty fit and we played a lot of tennis. And in doing so, we sort of had to eat as best we could. And yeah, so generally, I would say kept sort of dietary and that sort of thing pretty good throughout my life, in fact. And as I got older, obviously, with all the research and being interested in the biomechanics, being a teacher myself, it helped a lot in later life, pursuing activities that help the body and obviously eating more correctly because of all the information that's available to us today.
Yeah, someone was laughing the other day when I mentioned in taking part in sport in the very olden days, like when you and I were competing. Our coach never mentioned anything about diet, and not even whether we were hydrated, even if we were playing in really hot temperatures and lots of matches one after the other. It was never even considered. The coach never kind of mentioned, are you guys, what are you drinking, what are you eating? And so I think, yeah, as the information has come through, so we've applied it to our lives. But let's get back to polymyalgia. Can you tell us about, first of all, how long ago were you diagnosed with it, and what was that process? What were the symptoms that you felt that made you know that things were not great?
Well, it was very funny because it was December last year. What's that? 2019. We were in Cape Town, and anyway, we did a lot of walking and that sort of thing, and I felt very sore in my groin area. And to cut a long story short, when we got back in January, I had a number of hernia ops. I think it was 3 or 4 hernia ops, and then it was during that recovery that I thought, gee, this is taking a bit longer than what I've heard from other people having had hernia ops. And I thought, well, maybe I could have gotten an infection in the hospital whilst undergoing this op, and sort of battled along for a few weeks, and then I was beginning to get very sore, especially in my shoulders and my hips. And I thought, no, this can't be. There's some underlying factor here. So I went and had a blood test, my local GP, and whatever they do, a number of tests with the bloods, and he said that I've possibly got polymyalgia, and of course I didn't know what that was. So I said, no, fine, what do we do? So he said, well, we'll need to stick you on some meds. So that was the underlying thing. I thought I had an infection, but in fact it turned out to be polymyalgia.
Okay. And Jeff, the pain that you were feeling, was it muscular? Was it joint? Was it a bit of both?
It appeared to be both, like very sore. In fact, I couldn't get out of bed at times. I was so sore, and I used to sort of hobble around all day, and yeah, it was quite extraordinary. It was just something I had never experienced, and yeah, it was not nice at all. So yeah, it was very painful, and my family told me that I lost 10 years and I was very grumpy and I was not the same person as I used to be. But yeah, the pain is debilitating, and I experienced that firsthand.
Yeah. And Jeff, so it was quite a sudden onset, actually.
Yes, it was, as I said, it was after that op, I felt, oh, I'm feeling sore, and it gradually got worse and worse and worse until I was probably incapacitated, couldn't do much at all.
Okay, and so then, so you got the diagnosis, and what treatment action or what plan did you choose to follow?
Yeah, well, it was obviously once I'd known what it was, I jumped on the internet and I did a lot of research myself, and found out that the only course of action was to take cortisone, which was your prednisone. And I thought, wow, I don't really feel like doing that. So I started looking at alternative measures, and the long story short, I eventually found someone down at Umhlanga Rocks who said they could help me, and I went on a special diet, taking loads of supplements, very expensive supplements. And I was under the impression that 4 weeks or 5 weeks of this could sort my problem out, but it didn't do much at all. So it didn't work, and the diet was pretty tough in terms of what I was allowed to eat. And of course, the preparation thereof also was a bit of a nightmare, a total change. But I did stick it out for 5 weeks, and there was no result. So I thought, no, hang on, what's going on? So I phoned a very good friend of mine who lives in Canada. He was at school with me. He's a professor of medicine today, and I bounced it off him. And having spoken to him for a while, he just told me I was wasting my time with alternative medicine of that nature. He pointed out to me that I had a chronic condition, and with a chronic condition, you've got to sort of take the appropriate drugs that'll help you. He also mentioned that quality of life was important, especially at our age. That to be in pain and try and get through the day was really not an option. And he advised me that I should definitely go on prednisone and leave the alternative medicines alone. He pointed out again that in his 50 years of medicine, not one patient of his ever came right with alternatives, although many did try. And and he said, if I had come right, it would have made history. But he's not surprised that I didn't come right because of that. So it was basically someone I trusted from that we sort of big mates throughout our life, and obviously him being in a position to be able to advise correctly, I went back to the GP and I said, okay, it appears I need to go on prednisone. And so he agreed, and he obviously wrote a prescription, and there I was. And then I had a whole, it was a whole process to start on this. And he did mention that we should just check to see whether it does help, whether it certainly is polymyalgia and that sort of thing. And so I started on a 25 milligram dose of prednisone, and that I had to take for a week. And during that week, towards the end of that week, I certainly did feel a lot better. The pain sort of subsided. And then on the second week, I had to take 20 milligrams and eventually work down to nothing. And as soon as I stopped the prednisone, slowly the pain started coming back. The joint inflammation, that sort of thing, started coming back. So that proved that it was polymyalgia. And then I had to go on a not a course, but I had to start taking it full time. And so the advice was then to go back to 25 milligrams, and every 7 to 10 days drop by 2.5 milligrams until I got to a point where I could manage my activities. So that's what I did, and currently I take 5 milligrams and daily, and that appears to sort of help me. And am I completely pain-free? Well, no, but I can certainly handle the day without a problem and carry on and do things. The question is, am I able to do things that I used to be able to do? And sadly, that is not, because, I've realized that, I do exercise, but obviously I've got to just toe the line and do moderate exercise, not the hectic stuff I did before that. So there I am, 8 months or 9 months down the road now, and I'm carrying on a pretty normal life.
Fabulous. So can you just maybe give us an idea of the level of exercise that you were doing before and what you're able to do now?
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of exercise, and it's been an interesting, when I reflect back on my life, I used to probably go at it too hard. I sort of just love exercise, and I used to run and skip and punch the bag and do all sorts of things throughout my life, and gradually the body gets broken down. And why I say that is that I've had, although this polymyalgia is real, I've had events in my life that have slowed me down through other ailments, as in back operations, torn Achilles tendon, that sort of thing. So by virtue of, it's been a gradual process of breaking down my body, it appears, because it's been over a 10, 15-year period that I've been forced to slow down because my body is giving up in certain ways. And that I think has kind of helped my condition now with polymyalgia, is in the sense that over the years, I have toned down, been forced to tone down. So in essence, it's been a gradual tone down, and which makes things easier. So yeah, I think that maybe answers the question.
Yeah, and so when you say sort of normal exercise, I always like to compare myself with people I know. where I think I should be doing a lot more exercise, but in fact, I'm already doing 10 times more than they would be doing. Because when you are a person that's involved in sport, we like to keep active. We like to keep our bodies going. So do you think that your level of activity now would be pretty much average for a person of our age?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, what do I do now is I basically ride a mountain bike. When I'm at home, I'll do that 4 or 5 times a week. How many kilometers would I do? Probably between 50 and 100 kilometers a week. When I'm here consistently, what happens is obviously you go away and you break that cycle and then you've got to start over again. But I would say, yeah, in a week, I would average probably 60, 70 kilometers consistently when I'm at home. Is that, for me, that's moderate exercise because I sort of don't go out hard at it. I just make sure I get my cardiovascular working properly, and I, go uphill and I go on level ground so that I keep monitoring. I don't always get my heart rate too high. So yeah, I would say average at least, maybe a little bit more than average.
Yeah. Okay. One of the symptoms that comes with a lot of autoimmune diseases, and fibromyalgia is autoimmune, is fatigue. Do you find that how's fatigue affected you?
Yeah, it definitely does. I've been sort of bothered about that, and I had forgotten that was on the list of symptoms with this polymyalgia. And yes, I do get tired in the evenings. I sort of do get tired. In fact, I've taken up having a power nap in the middle of the day, which is probably tops half an hour, no more than that. Which I never used to do. And yeah, as I say, the evenings are quite short for me unless there's something on. So yes, definitely one gets more tired.
And has your sleep been affected?
No, my sleep, I've always slept well. And of course we do have the odd night or two which you don't, but by and large, I sleep well.
Okay. And then, Jeff, maybe just to explain to us in the research that you did, what actually is polymyalgia?
It's basically, it is a, as you say, they think it's, they're not very clear what it is, but they do know that it's inflammation of the joints and muscles, particularly the muscles of the shoulders, neck, and hip area. For some reason, it doesn't seem to attack any other area, and I'm not sure why. But yeah, it's they think it's a part of the autoimmune family, and it's particularly the shoulders and hips I find that is effective.
Okay, and so with the fact that it's inflammatory, are there certain foods that you know of that will help with your inflammation? Or
I take a lot of anti-inflammatory foods. What are they? Well, there's a whole host of them, of course, but leeks, for example, is one of them. I have a little glass of leek juice before anything in the morning, and sort of, you just dive onto the internet and you get to know what vegetables are good for you. So I eat a lot of vegetables, cauliflower, broccoli, a lot of salad stuff, that sort of thing. And whether that helps or not, truly I can't measure, because I think this cortisone or prednisone that I'm on does by and large sort the problem out. I would think that eating proper foods and that will, whether it helps polymyalgia, but it's good for you anyway. So it doesn't do you any harm to eat the good foods, and there's a whole host of them on Dr. Google, which I often look at. And yeah, so from that point of view, I eat, I think, very healthily. You know, I get my vitamin D. I don't take pills for it because I get it from the sun. You know, I'll be out in the sun most days for 20, 30 minutes with my back facing the sun. So I get a natural vitamin D dose. I go out, fortunately, have a property with a few fruit trees around, and I'll pick a grapefruit and I'll get my vitamin C from that, eating a grapefruit. So I don't take any supplementary pills at all. I generally like to get that from fresh stuff.
So the only pills that really you are on is the cortisone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is the only pill I'm on is the cortisone.
Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so what, and I'm going to make this a broader question, not only the polymyalgia, but in the fact that you've had the back ops and the heart ops and whatever, and now you've got polymyalgia. What has it taught you? The body kind of
yes,
on itself.
Yeah, well, you know, there's always someone in a worse condition than you. So that's what one realizes, or that's what I realized. You know, when I thought, why me? It's always, why me? You know, what's happening? Why am I breaking down? You know, poor me. But there are a lot of people in worse conditions. So that does help, that you're not in, you know, you're not bad, because you can still operate and do things. Probably the biggest factor is a psychological one, in the sense that, you know, you're out and about and you're playing tennis and you're doing all these things with other people, you know, a few times a week. And then suddenly you've got these ailments that prevent you from socializing. You know, with what a sport is all about. It's socializing and having fun and meeting people and talking with people and discussing things with people. Then so basically I've stopped all sports. I mean, I played tennis all my life, and then suddenly, you know, back ops, polymyalgia, that sort of thing, you come to a T-junction and you've got to question and say, well, why do you want to pursue that if it's going to hurt your body more? So it's these tough decisions that one has to make, and then, you know, you try and make the correct one. And obviously, in my condition, it would be pointless me trying to play tennis again with a rotation around the back, and, you know, my shoulders being pretty sore with this condition. So you stop all those things. But by stopping all those things, you don't realize you're stopping a lot more in your life that you didn't realize. So for me, that was one of the biggest things to overcome, was that suddenly you're not in a position that you're going out and doing the things you used to do, and sort of playing with the people you used to play with. Suddenly that's kind of a dead end. And, you know, and although periodically one will go around to the tennis court where they're playing, you know, you can only do that sort of once every couple of months, because it's, you know, you just get on with your life and you do the things you can. And as time progresses, it becomes easier. You know, time heals many things, and that's one of them. So yeah, for me, that was the sort of one of the biggest things, was suddenly you're not out there with your friends, because circumstances have changed. You know, it's like-minded people do like-minded things, and then suddenly that stops and you're out on a limb, and you start doing other things. And I guess over, you know, the next few years, you know, one will get into more tranquil activities and meet people, and off you go again, I would think. But for me, that was a big one.
I think it is. And the question I want to ask you is, well, maybe make a statement. Many people, when they get ill, no matter what their nature is, in fact, when people have hardship, no matter what the nature is, they find it very lonely, because suddenly people who were their friends kind of can't really understand where they are, and they're not really there for you, no matter how strong the friendships have been. How did you find your friends generally?
Yes, in the beginning, you know, as I say, what we 9, 10 months into this program, and in the beginning, it was, you know, there was always that close contact with, you know, with all the social media that's available to us. But yeah, as time goes on, that becomes less and less for sure. And yes, I think one changes. I've changed as a person for sure. I really have, and and I get told that fairly often by my family. Maybe I've become a little bit insular, you
Mm-hmm.
know, from not being able to work. You know, from a tennis coaching point of view, I used to get out, and that once again, dealing with people, being active on court, suddenly that doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, you kind of become a loner. Yeah, I think that's not a bad word. You become a loner and you plod along doing things, and but you're basically on your own because everyone else is carrying on as normal. So understandably so. So yes, so a lot of things do change, and that for me is the biggest problem
Yeah.
is to cope with it, and to try and cope with it positively, and you know, so yeah, and I guess I'm still dealing with it right now. So it's for me, that's probably the biggest factor that one's got to deal with, or that I have to deal with.
And the fact that you were very active tennis coaching, that was your job, and that you aren't able to do that anymore, how big has that been for you?
Yeah, it's you know, it puts you out on a limb. um you know, first of all, you're not bringing in any income, you know, so that's a
Oh,
negative.
yeah.
uh and because of that, you know, psychologically it plays a part where you feel you're not as useful around the place as you once were.
Yeah.
You're not contributing like you once were, and all those. So it's a spiral really from when things are taken away from you. You know, it just happens by default. It's no one's fault. It's the reality of the situation, and that's what one has to come to terms with, is the reality that actually it is real. um, Deal with it, you know, and deal with the best way you can, and get on with it. You know, and you can do that. You know, you have to do that to try and live a life, but certainly you've got to keep working at it. Otherwise, you can get down. Is depression a word? You're possibly a little bit depressed at times that you've got to overcome. So yes, I find that the toughest part, but one's got to keep moving. You know, there's still life to be lived, and that's what you continually have to work on.
I think there is actually a choice in that there are many people who choose to just remain in victim mode, and they don't try and make life work for them. They kind of do a little bit of a collapse into themselves, and gradually their life just gets smaller and smaller, and they get more and more debilitated. So there's always that choice to become a victim. But for me, it's not actually a choice. We do need to keep going. We need to keep active. We keep positive, all the things that you are doing. But um, if you had a friend in a similar situation to how you are now, what would you want them to do for you? So in other words, you are diagnosed, you're not doing what you were able to do. What do you need your friends to do just to help you? Not to help you, what do you need your friends to do with you and for you?
Well, I think if someone was in the same boat as me, and didn't really know how to deal with it. I think I could obviously talk to them about it, saying, especially having gone through it, you know, you won up, you've got that experience. Not that, you know, anybody looks forward to an experience like that, but one could definitely help someone in terms of what you must do. For example, I would say just get onto prednisone straight away. Don't go through 2 months of hell before taking the plunge. That's something I would definitely advise them. And depending on their situation, you know, obviously, like I've told you, I would speak to them about this may happen, that may happen. This is what I experienced, and this is what I try and do to overcome it. That sort of thing. So yes, I think, like anything, once you've experienced something, you do have a little bit more info and can help others in the same situation.
Absolutely. So my second to last question is, through this all, obviously your family would have been impacted because we are a family unit. Generally, I know you've mentioned that your family have said you're a bit grumpy at times, but generally, how have your family coped with the fact that, you know, a very physically able, very involved, very giving kind of person suddenly was quite debilitated? How did your family cope with that?
In the beginning, it was, when I was especially on those, the alternative stuff, it was, you know, I think they were quite taken aback how debilitated I was. You know, and it was by no means a show act. It was genuine, and so yes, it did affect them that I was always just hanging around, you know, and as things got better from a point of view of when I went on to prednisone and sort of my movement ability became better. Obviously that was good, but I guess I'm still not the happy person I was a number of years ago or a couple of years ago. And maybe that's an underlying subconscious problem because I've had to change my life so radically. You know, does that take a number of years to get over? You know, I don't know. I'm still busy working through it. But certainly I'm pointed out quite often that I'm not the happy-go-lucky person I used to be. So by that observation, I can only say that it's pretty obvious that I'm not bouncy person that I used to be. And hopefully that changes in time. You know, I can get back to, you know, I don't know what it is. Is it a confidence thing? Does your confidence get knocked? I don't know. Possibly it is, you know, and we all know what the confidence factor is all about. It's a massive point in everyone's life. And so yes, from the family's take, I definitely have changed. And hopefully that gets better as I move along.
You know, it's very difficult to be bouncy and jumpy when your body's in pain. You know, but likewise, I'm so glad that we've spoken about the more sort of psychological effects of an illness, because when your body doesn't work like it used to, how can you carry on being the same? You know, you can't be. Yeah. Obviously, you are going to be, you're not going to be as happy. You are going to worry, you know, your confidence is going to take a knock. All of those sort of touchy-feely things suddenly become really important. And all of them can be, from a psychological point of view, we can build all of those things again. You might not change what your body's going through, but certainly you can regain a lot of the things that you used to have. It takes a lot of work, but as always, the first step is to be aware of it. You know, you can't heal what you don't feel. So you need to be aware of it, and then you can work with it.
It's pretty much like like this lockdown with this COVID-19 problem worldwide. I mean, suddenly people can't go anywhere. They've had to stay at home. They've had to change their life. So I think psychologically, I think it's massive. I think it's much more a psychological. It becomes a much more psychological problem than a physical one. And lockdown gives you kind of an example when you have to stop doing things that you're used to that you've done all your life. Suddenly you can't do them, and through no fault of your own. But it's kind of the same thing, you know, when you've been a sportsman and you sort of interact out there with people, and then suddenly that doesn't happen much. It kind of is the same thing. It becomes seriously psychological.
Very good example of those two things. So it's really talking about adapting to the new a new normal that you're experiencing at the moment. Adapting.
Correct.
And accepting, which are all little words but huge processes.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So the final question I have, Jeff, is there anything else you'd like to mention about being sick, about polymyalgia, about friends, about family? Is there anything else that you feel quite important to say to our viewers out there? Possibly even someone who's just recently been diagnosed.
Well, I can just say from my experience is that don't try and fight it. It is what it is. And go and get it diagnosed. Go and sort it out. It's no good sort of being in pain and trying to be a macho person and trying to get through the day with so much pain, because it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And so that's a very important point, is once you realize something is wrong, make a plan and deal with it. Don't just push it to the side and think that it's going to go away, because a chronic illness doesn't just go away. It's got to be treated, and it's got to be treated right. So that comes to mind immediately, in the sense that those 2 months that I battled it out was not pleasant, and that I can really pass on to someone, is that, you know, if there's a problem, go and get it sorted out. Find out what it is and get it sorted out, because life is pretty short, and to sort of be in pain is not ideal, and it makes you a grumpy person, and you've got to alleviate yourself of that pain, and obviously you need help.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier on that, you know, you would, if somebody was in a similar situation, you'd be able to help them. If one of the viewers is listening and they have a question for you, Jeff, would you be happy for them to get in contact with you? And if so,
absolutely, no problem.
And if so, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Probably WhatsApp.
Okay.
Probably WhatsApp is the best medium I have here.
Okay, so we'll give you at the end of the video, in fact, we'll put the captions in of your cell phone number. And then if you have a question for Jeff, please feel free to drop him a WhatsApp, and he can maybe help you negotiate what he's already negotiated.
Yeah, no problem.
So thank you, Jeff. Thanks for that generosity, and thank you for the time in doing this interview. It's always good to spend time with you, but it's also lovely that we can hopefully, by doing this video, we will have helped at least one person. So thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Sherry.